Hey everybody, Dustin DePirac here, and we have a special guest this evening, Greg Rosenstein, former IDS, now doing some stuff for Inside the Hall, also working, I believe, USA Today. He managed to make his way down to Raleigh today, so got no one else to talk to, so I brought him on.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Pretty much, that's really it. But anyway, huge, gigantic win today for Indiana. They come out to Raleigh, beat North Carolina State 86-75. They trailed by 7 points with 7:48 to go. Rallied back 30-12 from that point, 10-0 in the last 138. Just pretty much a humongous win. This was kind of the game that everybody's sort of looking at as the test. Butler wasn't, obviously played them pretty tough, but this was sort of the one that you kind of looked at a team that was at least on their level athletically, and they managed to pull it out. Pretty big one tonight, Greg. Just, what did you think about, first off, the first time you've seen these guys live in a while? What impressed you about what you saw tonight?
Yeah, I looked this up. This is the first win I've covered since last February, so it's a sort of a strange feeling. But this team, going into this game, this was the first real test, and you think, are they really the real deal? This is going to show what they're made of. And at first, early in the first half, you're thinking, they're getting out rebounded like crazy. There's no way they keep pace with NC State, but they really did, especially the second half. Guys like Jordan Holes hit clutch shots. I thought Christian Watford did a much better job after the first half. Down the stretch there, the defense picked up, and Zeller was great. In those last few minutes especially. So this team looks for real.
Yeah, no, you mentioned the rebounding. That was a huge difference. They were down 22-13 on the boards at the half. They'd given up 13 offensive rebounds, which turned into 16, I believe it was, second chance points. North Carolina State had 2 second chance points in the second half. That was it. I think Indiana won the rebounding battle in the second half, 24-18. Only gave up 5 offensive boards. Really changed a lot. Obviously, you mentioned Watford. He had obviously been slumping a lot. He'd really been struggling, especially on the boards. Wasn't shooting it particularly well. But I think he ends up with 7 rebounds. 7 rebounds in the second half. A lot of those on defense. You saw a lot more energy out of him. It was very clear that guys were not being afraid to take it to him and say, Christian, you need to do something more. You need to do something else. And he obviously stepped up his game a lot. You mentioned Zeller. I think you saw another big step in the maturity process of Cody Zeller today. He played a pretty strong center in Andrew Smith. Andrew Smith gave him a run for his money against Butler, but this is the first time he was kind of outsized, and he was dealing with wider bodies. Richard Howell and Deshaun Painter. They weren't. He had height over both of them, but he didn't have size over either, and they were just dealing with using both of those guys to defend him and give him problems. It took him a while to really kind of establish himself inside to be able to really get some room to work with. In some cases, they admitted that they just didn't get it in there. The Hoosiers admitted they just didn't get it in there to him, but in some cases he just really took a while to kind of establish himself. It seemed like he really grew up, I thought, in the second half.
I agree. And then one thing Crean mentioned, which we all kind of knew, but he really showed in this game, was just how smart of a player he is. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He doesn't take bad shots. And I think defensively, he's given up a lot of weight and a lot of size to some of these guys, but he's not getting in real foul trouble. Just the way he defends, just very smart. And I don't know, he was a difference maker out there tonight for me.
Absolutely, and some of the things they also did, they did more to get him sort of out in space. They let him float a little bit more, let him get out on the perimeter. Not necessarily on the perimeter, but out to about 10 to 15. He wasn't taking that shot, but he was getting the ball out there and sometimes driving it or cutting or just doing other things instead of just posting up and just trying to outwork his guy, because in some cases, he was losing some size there. It was tough for him to really kind of post up and just, seal off and get a lane. And he was still able to do that. He was still able to score that way, but found a lot of other ways as well. Again, some drives, also rebounded it really well, and just able to move around in space, which is really, I think, what he can do is what sort of makes him different than some of the better big men, the best big men in the Big Ten. Jared Sullinger is a guy that you just want on the low block. That's where you want him. That's where you want to get the ball. He can step out a little bit, but that's mostly his game, is just getting the ball in the low block, just getting you on his hip and just turning and getting you. Cody Zeller can do a lot more things. Doesn't have the same humongous frame, but he can move around a little bit. That's kind of what can make him dangerous. And it seems like he's learning more how to utilize that against bigger guys.
And he was the spark in that second half. The first half they went to him early, and then they really didn't go to him that often. I don't know the numbers in terms of that, but they went away from him a lot towards the end of the first half, and that's when it seemed like NC State was creeping back in it, and then they eventually took the lead at the end of the half. And then the second half, he had that he had that steal on the breakaway dunk, which I think was kind of a momentum shift, and then they just went to him a lot, and I think that was a huge difference.
Yep. Finished with 19.7 rebounds. I believe 13 of those were in the second half. A lot of them came after his parents left. His parents, Steve and Lori, came, I think, with half sort of jerseys, Indiana and North Carolina, because Tyler's playing down the road. I guess that tipped at like 9 o'clock in Chapel Hill. And he dead in classic kind of Cody fashion. He was asked about it, and he said, well, tough luck on them. Maybe they shouldn't come to the game at all. We would have won by 20. It's like classic Cody stuff right there. But, the first guy you mentioned that I haven't talked about yet, Jordan Hulls.
That fadeaway three?
Yeah, absolutely played like a captain today. More, and he has in the past, and especially last year when Jones and Watford were hurt, he kind of took the team over a little bit. But you saw an extremely mature Jordan Hulls today. You saw Jordy Hulls that was just grabbing guys by the shirt when he had to, and absolutely made just clutch shots, just ice cold, water, ice water through the veins plays tonight. The shot that he hit with 1:38 to go, I mean, the clock was kind of running down. They ran a ball screen that didn't do anything for Zeller. Didn't get a whole heck of a lot of space even for Hose, but he just pulled up and knocked it down in probably the most critical of circumstances.
And then he also hit those free throws towards the end. I mean,
he doesn't miss free throws.
He doesn't miss free throws. Now, the thing is, he needs to get to the line more because he doesn't miss. I think he only had seven free throws at 10 or something.
He's up to 52 in a row.
52 in a row now, but just the season, he doesn't get to the line enough.
No, it's tough for him. But you mean there was a few different plays, even some that don't really kind of show up. I mean, there was one play where he was just really getting draped over, and I think it was Lorenzo Brown was just really trying to take the ball off of him, and he just managed to weave the ball and just cross over, despite being kind of off balance, sort of facing the backcourt, and just somehow managed just to get a crossover, just find a way somehow to maintain possession, kind of uses, left-handed sort of whip it over to Zeller or somebody else on the left side of the perimeter, and Zeller, I think, drove, for a dunk or something like that, and it was, he was so close to losing the ball. Yeah.
Plus, I feel like he's doing a better job as, that quintessential point guard, dishing the ball out even more. Because, you're looking for Del Jones, he wasn't that effective today. He was actually making...
He wasn't horrible.
He wasn't horrible, but, he was... Some of the decisions he was making weren't the best necessarily, so I feel like Hulls did a good job kind of picking up the slack in terms of the guard play.
You've reached the point where Jordan Hulls is the point guard. I mean, maybe there's sometimes when doesn't have the ball in his hands all the time, but if you really, I didn't really get even the understanding of it until I was really just kind of watching the DVR of the Butler game, and you just see how much he's really directing traffic, even when he doesn't have the ball at all. He could be kind of in the left corner. He's telling everybody where to go, and he's always bringing the ball up. He's pushing it. He's doing a lot and he's been doing that well for weeks now, and throughout the season. But today he took it up a notch, and that's what they've asked him for. I mean, Tom Crean talked a lot tonight about him having a command presence, and you're just seeing it more and more every week. He's growing in that, and when he can also hit shots, dish the ball out. He had 5 assists tonight. That's when you see Jordan Hulls as captain, and for him to have a performance like that in a game as big as this, that kind of cements just sort of where his role is. Yeah. Not have a whole lot of time left. How big is this win? They're 7-0. They beat an ACC team. It's the first Power 6 conference team that they've beaten. And, they've got Stetson coming, but after that they've got Kentucky. And you got to think they've got a good chance of at least coming out of that 4-game stretch. Butler, North Carolina State, Notre Dame, and Kentucky with at least a 3-1 record out of that. Yeah. What does this say for this group going forward, do you think? I
mean, kind of like I said earlier, this team beat all the teams they were supposed to beat. Now they get to this point, and you say, are they the real deal? They got NC State with big guys and
tons of athleticism,
a lot more talent than the guys they've faced so far. And now they're coming in here and. They're the real. I mean, they're proving they're the real deal, at least for now. I mean, Kentucky, that could be an interesting game, obviously, but they're going to be more than likely undefeated going into that game. I think Assembly Hall is going to be rocking probably like it hasn't in years. And this is probably the biggest win, especially considering who the opponent is and it's on the road, and probably. A year?
It's up there. I mean,
in
terms of Crean's tenure, I mean, there's about 4 or 5 that you put an argument on. That there was the wins over ranked teams at Assembly Hall last year, the win against Pitt in Madison Square Garden his second year. And maybe there might be 1 or 2 more that you might put in the category here. They've beaten ranked teams before, but this is one that sort of proves that this team is legitimate. Where like last year they were just trying to grasp for something that they could point to that say, hey, we're making progress. We're doing something we can beat people. This is the one that sort of cements and say, okay, this is a team that you legitimately have to look at. Maybe it's an NCAA tournament team. It's tough to tell. There's a long way off. There's a lot more basketball to play, but this is the one that makes you think, okay, this is a team. Anyway, that's all we need. Thanks, guys.